Good afternoon, everybody. Today marks 1 year of Wired4Women, but more importantly, it is International Women's Day. It's really a great privilege for me to address you today on this day where we celebrate women's achievement, also a day that marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity and raising awareness about women's equality. If you, the men of Asante, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. I shall call upon my fellow women. We will fight. We will fight till the last of us falls in the battlefield. This is a quote from Nanaya Asantawa. Asantawa was the princess of the Asante people, and now the people of Ghana in the 1800s. In 1874, the Asante people were under attack from the British. Asantawa proclaimed that if the men of the kingdom will not defend the people, then the women will rise to the challenge. This challenge traditional gender roles. She led the rebellion and became an image of strength and resilience for the Asante people. This year's theme, International Women's Day, according to the UN Women Organization, is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID World. COVID is a battle that we are all facing. Its impact on global economy and local economies has been devastating, more so for women. In developing countries, according to the Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development, OECD report on policy response to COVID-19, entitled Women at the Core of the Fight Against COVID-19 Crisis. Women are leading the health response. Women make up almost 70% of healthcare workforce, exposing them to a great risk of infection. At the same time, women are also shouldering much of the burden at home. Given school and childcare facility enclosure, long-standing gender inequalities in unpaid work. Women also face a high risk of job and income loss and face increased risk of violence, exploitation, abuse, or harassment during times of crisis and quarantine. These challenges are not new. Throughout the ages, women have had to deal with such inequalities and threats. However, COVID-19 has exacerbated them. According to the PwC Women in Work Index for 2021, the pace of progress towards gender inequalities across the OECD remains slow, and COVID threatens to reverse the important gains that have been made in the last decade, as the negative impacts of the pandemic are excessively being felt by women. This means that we as women who have the platforms for change need to work harder to ensure that the gender equity narrative is top of mind in our places of work, the communities in which we live, and the academic institution we and our children attend. Gender equalities remain our battle. In my mind, our responsibility is to be agents of change, not just for ourselves, but for those who will come after us and for those who do not have a voice. Our responsibility is to do what we can as individuals and as a group to address the issue of gender inequality where we find it. The World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report suggests that it will take at least another 100 years to bridge the gender gap across the globe. Our responsibility is to come together on platforms such as this, not to pay lip service, but to take issues and challenges raised and push them forward to eradicate gender equality in our communities, workplace, and industries. Our responsibilities is to encourage the female youth to adopt STEM-related careers and to prepare for gender equality in the workplace. The truth remains that women and girls are underrepresented in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and fields subjects. World Economic Forum statistics show that in maths, statistics studies, there are only 4.5% female students. In engineering, manufacturing, and construction, there is only 3.1 female students, which in turn shrinks the number of women in STEM, posing further restriction for our growth as women in the sector. And lastly, our responsibility is to raise our sons and daughters differently to ensure that the new world they create is a more gender equal world. As a mother of girls, it's important for me we change the narrative about gender inequality and set the stage to take the necessary steps ourselves to change the world we live in. I want a more inclusive world for our children where they are not judged based on their gender, but on the value they bring to our world, communities, and industries. Overall, there's been great strides made by numerous industries to bridge the gender gap, and some have done more than others. We have a long way to go before gender inequalities become part of their DNA. The ICT sector is one industry that is still lagging. Only 23% of tech jobs are held by women in South Africa. Out of 236,000 ICT roles, women only occupy 56,000 of them, according to a study by Women in Tech ZA. We must be steadfast in challenging the archaic behavioral concept in society by upskilling, reskilling ourselves and our youth, being positive role models, and changing the narrative that empowers the next generation. Throughout history, women have made great strides in ICT sector. Some have changed our world, and they've done so quietly. Women such as Grace Hopper, the esteemed computer scientist, her work led to the development of COBOL, an early programming language which we still use to this day. In 1947, she recorded the world's first ever real computer bug, and it's also said that she coined the phrase, "It's often easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission." Heidi Lamar, the inventor of Wi-Fi. Heidi was a self-taught innovator and film actress who was awarded a patent in 1942 for her secret communication system, designed with the help of composer George Attell. This frequency hopping system was intended as a way to set radio-guided torpedoes off course during the war. But the idea was eventually inspired Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth, technology commonly used today. Amy Easley, she was a NASA rocket scientist and a trailblazer in gender and racial diversity in STEM. When hired, she was one of only 4 Black employees at the lab. 34 years later, she had contributed to numerous programs as a computer scientist, inspired many through her enthusiastic participation in outreach programs, and she has broken down barriers as equal employment opportunity counselor. Easley's vital work on the Centaur rocket project while at NASA laid the foundation for space shuttle launches in the future. There are many more. The lessons we can learn from these ICT trailblazers is that they changed the narrative and laid the foundation for those who followed. They opened doors for women in STEM and provided inspiration for us to be agents of change. I hope that you will be inspired by today's discussions and be motivated to become agents of change for the next generation. I leave you with a quote from Malala Yousafzai that demonstrates the power of the next generation of female leaders. I raise up my voice, not so that I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back. I thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nomonde White Ndlovu, and it is an absolute pleasure to be with you here today. On behalf of the Wired4Women Advisory Board, Brainstorm, and our incredible sponsor, BCX, I would like to welcome you to our first Wired4Women virtual event for 2021. To all of our ladies, happy International Women's Day, and may this truly be our best season yet. A season where we see more women occupying leadership roles across industries and leading the way to a better and more equitable world. It is great to see that the tide is turning as we continue to root for and celebrate the appointment of Her Excellency, Madame Vice President Kamala Harris, the first female VP of the United States of America. Bringing it closer to home, former two-time Nigerian Finance Minister, Mrs. Ngozi Okoje, has been appointed as the Director General of the World Trade Organization. She is the first African and the first female to lead the body which governs trade rules across nations. While the challenges are many, the next generation of women need to see women leading without hesitation, and not women constantly defending their seat at the table. And to a large extent, the 2021 International Women's Day topic is an actual call to action. And these examples that Mandisa has walked us through, and these examples that I have put forward today, are valuable proof points that when women lead, lives are impacted and changed for the better. I'm truly excited for what we have in store for you today. We have incredible guest speakers who I have the pleasure of introducing to you shortly, as well as a panel discussion which will force us to think about how do we actually inculcate these changes that we need to ensure that women can continue to occupy space. Now, without further ado, I have the immense privilege of introducing you to our first keynote speaker for today. Now, this woman is an inspiration to so many people and remains a proof point of what the human spirit can overcome, irrespective of the hardships thrown at it. Amanda Dambuza is not new to anyone who is listening in today and is known worldwide. She is the author of the world-acclaimed book, Baked in Pain, a memoir about how she rose above her circumstances, rife with segregation, abuse, and hardship, to become a globally celebrated businesswoman and humanitarian. She has also authored a children's book called A Brave Girl Named Aya, which my daughter and I continue to enjoy as our bedtime story. It's an educational story that affords caregivers an opportunity to tackle hard topics with their children in order to lift the veil of silence around abuse within their respective homes, should it be happening. It is a story of rising, of hope, and of resilience, as well as hard work. Amanda is also the executive producer and creator of the Vastly Sage talk show on YouTube, a platform through which she reaches audiences around the globe with the aim of affording them a space to tackle hard conversations in order for healing and transformation to take place. This show brings forth expert experience and shared personal life experiences with guests as well. She's also the creator of Vastly Sage Mentorship, which is a monthly mentorship platform on the same YouTube channel. She continues to impart all of her lessons in business and her personal life journey in order to help people to reach a high expression of self. This talk show and mentorship platform is ably supported by the annually Vastly Sage Brunch, which brings together a hand-picked selection of inspiring guest speakers who pour their hearts and souls into inspiring and motivating all those that attend. And as an attendee from last year, I can vouch to the fact that you do not walk away the same. The common theme throughout these platforms is practical and applicable advice and resources, as well as tools that will empower the audience that watches. They are resources and educational centers which are truly, truly valuable and which Amanda is very proud of. While her resume remains awe-inspiring, having had the privilege of knowing Amanda for a few years now, the one constant is her unwavering vision of ensuring that the world becomes a more equitable and fair society for marginalized communities, women, and children. In spite of her well-earned success, it is easy to fall in love with her just from observing her from the engagements that she has on social media and the many platforms where she's had the opportunity to speak. But to experience her contagious personality in person, as well as her deep humanity, remains a joy, a personal joy of mine. And it is my immense privilege, without further ado, to introduce you to our first keynote speaker today, the formidable Amanda Dambuza.
Thank you so much. I mean, you say such nice things about me. I've also just learned that maybe I need to shorten my bio.
it's such a pleasure to be here, and I treat this as an immense privilege. Thank you so much for the invitation to BCX and IT Web, and Nomonde, you and I go back, and it's such a great pleasure to be here. I remember very well when I graduated from university. It was one of the most ecstatic days of my life. I had this. For me, it wasn't just about the certificate that I was getting. It was more about my life that was beckoning. It was about starting my journey. It was about that opportunity to start living what I believed was a life of greatness, but I hadn't known, hadn't been told about. But I just had this belief. I had this undying drive to get somewhere. So whilst everyone was, all about the certificate, all I could see in front of me was an opportunity to own my life. And, why did I feel this way? I had come from a really difficult, traumatic and abusive childhood. And, I had come from a background of no hope. You're not going to amount to anything. I had come from a background of male figures in my life who did not protect me, instead were the ones who inflicted the most harm. I had come from a place of you have been abandoned, nobody wants you. And for me, it was something that I never connected with, because I just felt that I just needed time. I needed time to grow. I needed time to own my life. So graduating for me was a significant life-changing moment. And it was hard though to get to that. I had to work hard to get through university. I had to get myself through university because there was no money. I was one of those missing middle children. I in fact got the financial exclusion letter from WITS. And it was really, really a hard moment when I got that letter, because I felt like something was getting in the way of my journey. And I knew that I had a lot of work ahead of me. I knew that I had to work really hard, not just on myself, but on changing the world around me. I knew what pain I had carried with me, but I didn't give up. One of the things that just kept me going was this understanding and this promise that my life would get better. And for me, graduating was that. And I was one of those really fortunate graduates to get into a job the very next year after graduating. And one of my early managers or leaders. In fact, I don't even think he deserves to be called a leader. He wasn't one. But one of my managers was incredibly degrading. I was a junior project manager. I had just got into a bank and I was learning the ropes. But I had so many senior executives wanting to work with me, and they started asking me questions like, what's going on with you and your boss? And I was like, what's going on? What do you mean, what's going on? And they said to me, some of the things he says about you are really not kind. And it really got to me. My heart was broken, because I felt like he was someone that was supposed to lead me. And the truth of it, when you unpacked it, it turned out that, I was a threat to him long before I even realized I was a threat. I was just a junior. I was just learning the ropes. I was doing my best. Instead of supporting me and giving me a helping hand, he found every reason to degrade me. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed, because the same people he was trying to turn against me were the same people who were really championing my cause. So in that moment, I felt like, honestly, we need better leaders. We need people who actually care about being leaders. We need people who don't just want the title of leadership. We need people who understand what it is to serve. People who want to wake up every single day at making a difference in people's lives. But I fought through that. I pushed through, because I was very clear about my life vision. I was very clear about the dreams that I had. And getting through these difficult work environments was just one of the hurdles I had to jump over. I must be honest, I wasn't really ready for what I had come across. because university, I mean, they don't teach you these things. They don't teach you that you're going to have a horrible boss along the way. They don't teach you that, you're going to have to fight through an incredibly competitive environment. They don't tell you that you're going to have colleagues that are against you. They don't, there's so much more that we are not taught at school, but you have to learn it when you get there. And I fought through all of that. I mean, my entire journey in my career is quite a story. But I worked so hard in corporate to just become something, and I soon learned, though. I learned how to navigate. I learned how the game works. And I decided that I was not going to be eaten by the game. Many times I would be in meetings where I'm the only woman, and in the middle, and I was a project manager, I'm running a big project, and there's 12 men in the room, and most of them would just start speaking Afrikaans, and I'm the one running the meeting. And I'll be like, actually, can we all speak a language that we can understand? Because if I start speaking isiXhosa, then you're going to have a problem. And it was, at first, it was frowned upon, but I kept persisting. And there were days when I got so frustrated and I got up and left the meeting room because nobody was willing to listen to me. And this was back in the early 2000s. And we can all say, and I think a lot of women for the longest time have attributed their success to the ability to navigate a male-dominated world, to adjust, to adapt into a male-dominated world. And I think time has come for us not to be proud of that. But we did what we had to do. I mean, we all know very well about those Friday drinks with the boys at a smoky pizza joint, smelly on top of it. but I mean, so many of us will tell you, if you didn't do that, you were outside the club and you didn't have any opportunity. But one of the things I always set my eyes on was, I'm going to change the system from within. So I'm going to become one of the boys, but I'm not a boy. I refuse to be a boy. You know those things that people say, oh, women need to start thinking like men. I'm like, Askis, think like men. Wait, I've been living with a man for 14 years. Let me tell you some of my findings from this studying this particular subject. I just think that, I mean, we have no business aspiring to be like men. We are fantastic as we are. I've observed my husband. I was like, oh, babe, please, I need some onions. It's about lunch. I'm about to cook lunch. I'm out of onions. My husband would be gone for 2 hours. Our grocer is literally 2 kilometers away. My husband will come back with no onions. And I'm asked to aspire to be like a man. I'm like, okay. And I look at, the explosion over something as minuscule as a driver not driving the right way or bad driver, and this explosion of emotions. And let me see, we've been told we are the emotional ones. I am thinking I'm okay. I don't have to aspire to be like a man because I'm fantastic as I am. And I really think that, though, we must learn that the moment we are within these circles, our job is to change the rules. But we first have to understand the rules. Let's understand how they work so that we can change them. We are leaders that are needed, not just in a crisis. We are needed every single day. So a lot of us will tell you, yes, we experienced what happened to people who didn't play by the rules. They had no future. They didn't go anywhere. But don't we dream of a world where our promotions and our rewards aren't linked to a Friday drink or a Sunday braai? A lot of us have families. This is time taken away from our families. And as a result, women are constantly having to choose between building their careers or being mothers, something that is incredibly archaic. And we have to change those narratives. We have to challenge those stereotypes. So time has elapsed since I was in a young junior building my career. I grew to be an executive at large banks. I'm still proudly one of the girls in STEM. There are a number of them. There has been significant shifts. And I mean, I started my career back in 2000. So I've been at this for 21 years. I've seen the shift. Yeah, of course, it's not enough if you take everything into context, but we must remember that we have come from somewhere. And as we celebrate International Women's Day, we must remember that being a woman in leadership role has nothing to do with the title. It has everything to do with the role that you play within your ecosystem and the energy that you bring to changing things around. So we must not forget that. And I say, how about we turn things around? We rule and let men come to baby showers, eh? So I mean, many things have changed, and many countries have seen significant leadership changes as well. We have seen how countries that are led by women have weathered the storm, and probably handled things a little better than we've seen around. That on its own is something to celebrate amongst the many celebrations that we have. And I think though, when we are being taught things like nice girls don't get the corner office or think like a man, we need to just pause and reflect on what it is that we bring to the table. To the table, we bring something that men do not have. And that is, we have the ability to elevate others. We have the ability to be empathetic. It is inborn. We're born with it. It's ingrained in who we are. And if we keep trying to say we must think like men or be like men, we're saying that we need to change our genetic makeup. And I don't believe that is acceptable. In fact, that is the strength we bring to the table, the ability to put others in front of ahead of us. And it has also obviously been a bit of a disadvantage for women because we end up burning out because we feel like we are doing everything ourselves, because we're putting other people before us, which means that we also have a long journey to learn that we have to look after ourselves. We cannot give what we do not have. And as leaders and as women leaders, we need to stop feeling sorry and apologetic about wanting to take what we need, what we deserve, in order to make the world a better place. So we do come with a great sense of humility, something that goes a long way as a leader, because you are able to include others, you are able to admit to mistakes, you are able to learn, and when you have humility, you've got the ability to include others in your decision making, and there is no way that I think we should change that, and we are willing to take feedback, we are willing to change, we're willing to take change courses. We are resilient. If you can raise families and still be kicking it in business or in your job, I take my head off to you and I say, do not change. Do not be like a man. Just be who you were created to be and grow into that skin and make it feel comfortable. And let us continue to trailblaze. Let's challenge the norms. Let's challenge the societal norms that say women cannot have it all. I say, let's challenge the norms that say women are not strategic. Women don't have vision. They don't have guts. They don't know how to make tough decisions. I say we challenge that every single day, but we don't challenge it just by talking. We be exemplary in how we do that. We live and talk that. We don't just say we support women. We live and talk that. We act in a manner that is congruent with our words. So we must continue to absolutely challenge gender stereotyping. I mean, at what point did, and I mean, at some point in history, uh, this gender stereotyping challenge started. I would use a word like nonsense started, but okay, I'm trying to be nice. but we've had to challenge gender stereotypes, but we have got to be so deliberate about it. If you are in a role, in a position of changing a woman's life, please do it. Do not just think about the hardships that it has taken for you to get there. Understand that you can only change the rules when you understand what the rules are. And for us to be forcing ourselves and getting into these boys' club, it's not just to be like a man, it is to change the rules that we do not like. So it would be a shame if we got into those roles, into those clubs, and then we become like others. We don't change what we had set out to change, because then all we're doing is just speaking and not walking the talk. So it's really important that we do that. I have also seen significant shifts in business where there has been a proliferation of women-owned businesses, and I'm one of those. I left corporate 7 years ago to run my own business, a project management business, and women's businesses remain underfunded. And it's also, again, this factor of you have got to know somebody or be in a network or be in a club, be in a clique for you to be able to get funding or to get the right bankers to even care or be interested in you. I'm one of the fortunate ones because I have had that funding. But the truth is that I deal with a lot of businesses that I do incubate within my own business that have struggled to even get a little bit of recognition and opportunity from corporates or other businesses. So if you are in a position where you can make a difference, you have to make a difference. It is not a it is, I don't think it's an option. I really think it is the right thing to do, and we all have to be conscious about how we're doing it. So I am able to unlock my own supply chain, my own value chain to help other women because I know what it's like to not have those opportunities. And I think we must continue to address the barriers that undermine our effort to building sustainable careers, businesses. And often we are the stumbling block. We get in our own way because we don't believe we will be good enough. We still carry all of that baggage that has come from our childhood. Many people carry that baggage pretty much like I did. But we need to appreciate that those are barriers to getting us to a successful career, or be it in business or corporate. So let's deal with them. And women's evolution into power has unfortunately remained uneven. So even within the woman group, we still have women who are more privileged than others. And that needs to also start to change. The moment a woman is in an elevated position, please bring up somebody else, bring up another woman, because I really believe that the more we can have a collective voice, the less women will leave top positions because they burn out. That's one of the reasons we do not have as many women in top roles as we would like. It's not because they're not competent. And I don't actually I think I've started to question the narrative that there isn't an opportunity, because there are opportunities. And there are instances where opportunities are abundant and opportunities are scarce in other instances. However, women themselves find that the roles they burn out because they're giving so much and they don't have anything to give to themselves. So we have to be really careful about taking on the world and taking it on all by ourselves. The more women we can have in those roles and the more collective our voice can be, it will reverberate throughout the globe, and we can really change our narrative. We can change how things are, because the way things are is not how they were meant to be. It is up to us to change them. So that collective leadership is everything. And when all women stand and lead, it means we've got a far more stronger and powerful frontier. Imagine how powerful just one woman is. And just that collective power of understanding we can shift the world ourselves. It's really important. So as a let us behave as though there's no gap. Let's tell ourselves that there is equality. Let's behave like how we would like to see it. Let's carry on like that. And this does not mean we are saying it does not exist. I'm just saying the moment we can shift our mindset and our attitudes towards what it would feel like when we have equality, what it would feel like when there's gender parity, then actually, you know what, we might start to act differently ourselves. So if you don't like that fact that women are underpaid, start thinking that actually I'm in a role where I can make a difference. So I'm going to make sure that women are getting paid equally. I'm going to drive the change that I want to see. And it's really important that we start thinking differently, and we not stop thinking like victims and start thinking more like we are the victors of our own agenda, and we are going to push our own agenda. So I really think that if you still see yourself as oppressed, chances are your entire predisposition is about I'm depressed. So let's start to challenge that notion in our heads and stop standing in the way of our own success. And let's accept our role in society. Let's own it. Let's talk about the hardships that we've had, because it's no point having people wishing they were like us and we don't tell them the real story of how we got here. It is not authentic of us to mislead the coming generation and claim to have achieved things in a certain manner when we didn't. So let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be honest about our journey. Let's appreciate and embrace where we've come from. But most importantly, let's look forward to an incredibly bright future. Because it is in times of crisis that, in fact, leaders and women leaders are the most needed, because they have proven that they can lead. And I don't understand why we must feel so apologetic when we are incredibly powerful at what we do. So it is not in changing who we are, but accepting that our voice matters, accepting that it heals, accepting that it builds. And we are needed every single day. You know, we must own it. We must stand up and be counted, because ultimately, if we don't challenge the status quo, if we don't challenge how things are, then we're never going to be able to change them. And I think it's really important that we embrace that. And it matters what kind of legacy we leave behind, because ultimately, our generations, our children, are going to be walking in the same footprints. And I care every single day. I care about the kind of world I'm leaving behind. I care about the kind of children I'm raising. I care about the gender stereotypes in my own home. I care that my children challenge me and their father in terms of how we are bringing them up. Are we congruent with our values in terms of what we do every single day? Because ultimately, the people who are in the boardroom and driving these injustices against women come from homes. They come from somewhere. And we must challenge institutions. We must challenge the family structures. We must challenge the cultural norms. We must continuously challenge the workplace norms, and not be afraid to tackle this challenge head on. So I say, let's be bold in how we tackle this. Let's keep going. We have made such strides, and we cannot underestimate that. It has taken an incredible amount of effort. Many of us are proud to have been at the forefront of that and continue to fight for women's rights and advocate for women's rights. So let's not shy away. Let's not think like men. Let's just be ourselves and embrace the collective power of our leadership as women. And understand that the footprints we leave behind truly matter, and our children are going to have to choose if they're footprints that they'll be proud of, or if they're footprints they'd rather shy away from. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So many nuggets of wisdom, but I'll try and pull through the key ones that I take away from this. And that is to remain our authentic selves, even as female leaders, and that we should not normalize asking women to adapt to working in a male-dominated world by becoming men, because we will not reach our true potential by being that which we are not. And we bring to the table the ability to elevate others and to be empathetic, which is a strength for which many women have, but not that many men do. And we are strategic. We can lead. We've seen so many examples of women who are. And if you are in a position to change another woman's life, please do it. Please do it. If you are in a position where you can change the rules to make the lives of women easier within corporate spaces, please do it. It is not enough anymore to be the only woman around a table and to be comfortable with that. The time is now for all of us to start collaborating, because if we want the system to change, we cannot do it as individuals. It requires a collaborative effort for female leaders and men who stand together to force ourselves to look past biases to ensure that many more women can occupy seats at the table because they deserve it. Thank you very much for those words of wisdom, Amanda. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have our next keynote address. I am so excited. I think it was the first time I met a female physicist. So excited to be introducing Dr. Adriana Murray to you. Now, Adriana is on a mission. She has a vision of a future where humans can live in harmony with each other and the environment, irrespective of whatever planet we may be on. She has recently visited Antarctica and Oman on location scouts for her organization, Proudly Humans Off-World Project. The project is a series of off-the-grid settlement experiments in the most extreme environments on the planet, in preparation for life on the moon, Mars and beyond, as well as a sustainable future here on Earth. Adriana is a director of the Foundation for Space Development, an initiative of which is Africa to Moon, Africa's first mission to the moon, to positively impact lives in Africa through space technology. She's a member of the South African government ministerial task team on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. She's also faculty university and corporate education, as well as an astronaut candidate with the Mars One project. With her background in academic research and as the head of innovation at SAP Africa between 2017 and 2019, Dr. Adriana embodies the belief that exploration drives innovation. Her award-winning PhD and postdoctoral research in quantum biology focused on photosynthesis and the origins of life. She's currently developing a blockchain-based economic system for extreme and resource-constrained environments towards a second PhD. When not doing research, you may find her living in the forest, climbing mountains, driving, or running a trail. In addition to her extensive and incredible resume, she's also currently completing a book, How the Voyage to Mars Will Evolve Earth, sharing her message that the voyage to Mars will expand our understanding of reality and our place in it. A giant leap towards a future we can be proud of, whatever planet we are on. I don't know about you, but having an African leader championing our journey to Mars is something I am immensely proud of. And I look forward, Dr. Adriana, to hearing from you today. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Nomonde. It's such a pleasure to be here. Not in person, but I heard some rather festive background noise and heard you guys were having a wine. So cheers. It's such a pleasure to be here with you speaking about International Women's Day. But also I feel really lucky to be speaking about the space industry in 2021, because while we have seen the world come to an economic standstill, of course, because of the pandemic we've been experiencing, there is one industry that has been all systems go, and that is the space industry. I'm actually recently back from Namibia just yesterday on a location scout for one of our off-world locations, but I'll talk a bit about that in a moment. I hope you're all having fun and enjoying. Such a pleasure to see Amanda speak, such wise words, such an impactful message as always. So a wonderful event, and it's a pleasure, and thank you for having me. So I thought to begin with, I do have a background in quantum physics. So I thought we'd go through a little bit about the molecular dynamics of the COVID-19 molecule. Especially equation 1.25 is going to be important for the quiz at the end. No, I'm kidding. Okay, please do relax. I do have a few slides here, mostly with images. No more equations, I promise. So sit back and relax, and let's take a bit of a journey to the edges of the solar system, perhaps a bit beyond, and also importantly back to Earth. I think we've heard enough about this molecule in the last couple of years. So let me skip. I think let's take a moment to be grateful. We're either in person or online, but for most of us, we've been able to continue working through the pandemic, through the economic lockdowns, because we have communication systems. So let's take a minute to be grateful for that. But to enable our communication systems to work, the first requirement is power, right? Let me not make any bad jokes about Eskom at this point. Let's be grateful for the sun, because this is the source of all power, and nothing interesting happens without energy, and the sun is really the origin of energy in our solar system, enabling chemistry and enabling biology and life on our planet. Next, let's be grateful for water. And as I said, I've just returned from the Namib, where this molecule, this H2O molecule, its presence or its absence really determines the way that people are able to live. So let's be grateful for our planet, 71% covered by liquid water. This molecule is really crucial for life. And I don't need to go into details about quantum biology calculations, but let me share one aspect that we know all life has in common, and that is the requirement for water. So there is no living system that we have ever found on Earth that can survive entirely without water. This is a precious molecule for life. We believe life may have emerged in the oceans on our planet. This liquid form is really a prerequisite for biochemistry to have emerged, we believe. So let's be grateful that we do have access to water. Food. So our planet is unique, and while I will talk about space, I'm just running through some of the unique and beautiful features of our planet. And one of those is that we can see life from space. This is not the case for any of the other planets, which we've, of course, explored remotely so far through probes orbiting these planets or through landers that have landed on these planets. But as of yet, we have not detected life anywhere else in the solar system. And as you can see from this satellite image, you know, these green belts across the equator and in the north and the south of our planet are indeed photosynthetic organisms that not only provide the oxygen that we breathe, the food that enables the whole food chain to survive, but also regulating temperature and rainfall, and really a beautiful aspect of our extremely vibrant planet teeming with life. But as a fundamental resource category, let's acknowledge that life is food in some sense. And I will return to these categories as we go: the power, the water, the food. And in the final category, I would say data. And humans have created an immense amount of data in the past few decades, and that's increasing. But in fact, we were not first, because this molecule that you recognize here, the DNA molecule, the double helical structure, contains all of the information that is needed to continue life. So parents will pass on information to the offspring through this DNA molecule. So life has in fact produced important data necessary for life before humans developed computers and the internet and all the other amazing tools that we use based on the sharing of data on a global scale. But these are the four categories that are necessary for life. Of course, there are far more things that are necessary for a full life, but let's say necessary for survival are indeed power, water, food, and communication systems, or some kind of information. So that now that we've been grateful for the fundamental resources that we get from our planets, let's talk a little bit about Mars. And sorry, I'm just reading. I hope my audio is okay. Feel free to send me a message if it's not. Otherwise, let me continue. So this is a picture of me at age 13 back in 1997. And I must say, in the 90s, we weren't doing robotics or IoT or 3D printing or any of the amazing things that high school students are doing nowadays. But we were building paper mache models of futuristic ideas, including the city on Mars that my friend and I designed. And if you can see clearly enough, you'll see that the categories there are power, air, water, food, city life, crops. So the kinds of categories of resources that I've been talking about now, whether we are feeling grateful and reflecting on our life on Earth, or whether we are thinking of leaving the planet, these are the same categories of resources that we will need to consider as we go forward. So you might have watched The Martian. If not, let me give you some homework for the week to watch it or watch it again. But this is a great movie from in my opinion, because it's based on a book that was well researched by Andy Weir, and is fairly accurate in terms of the tools and the technology that we will use to survive once the first humans get to the surface of Mars. So that's Matt Damon in some kind of movie set with his solar array. And power is really the first and primary requirement to set up a community off planet would be power, to power the electronics and all of the systems to provide the water, the food, and the communication systems that are necessary. So while we're in the solar system, the sun is shining, and therefore solar energy is a great way to establish a community off of Earth, but also a really important aspect of our sustainability here on Earth, is to be able to access this abundant resource from the sun more efficiently and on a larger scale than is currently being done. Water, so that's the next category of considerations if, like me, you've been thinking of getting to Mars since you were a child, because water is really quite heavy, considering how much water we drink every day, considering how much water we use to grow food. It's not practical to think about carrying all this water with whenever leaving Earth. So arriving on a planet that has water is critical. Now this, you might say, is not Mars now, and you would be correct, but this is what Mars looked like around 4 billion years ago. This is an artist's impression. Based on the canyons that we see, based on the pebbles that we see, based on the structures that we know, geologically speaking, can only have been formed by the presence of large bodies of liquid water. This is what we know Mars looked like previously. So what happened to that water is one natural question, which we don't have time to go into today, but there is still remnants of this water in the sand, and this is crucial. There are ice crystals, around 2 to 3% of the sand that the Curiosity rover has scooped up contained H2O. So this tells us that we need to prepare bulldozer attachments essentially for the rovers to dig up large amounts of sand, heat it using solar power, condense it, store it in tanks, and this will be the water that will provide that crucial H2O molecule for crews arriving on Mars potentially in the next decade. The next category, as you remember, is food, and I'm sure you're all familiar with these kind of indoor farming setups, because this is not only the way that we will grow food off of Earth, but in fact, I believe this is the future of food security on Earth. Particularly in Africa, we have the highest rates of urbanization globally, which means more people living in densely populated urban centers, but also less people doing agriculture outside of the city. So a natural way to solve food security for increasing urban populations is to produce food in these urban areas. And when we think of rooftops or basements or discarded parking lots, these become natural places to grow food. And the benefits of having these enclosed is that you can use 95% less water than traditional agriculture. Of course, you can imagine traditional agriculture, the water seeps away into the ground and you wait for the next rain. In these kind of systems, you really collect all the drip off and cycle it back through the system. You can add the perfect amount of nutrients, you can put the perfect intensity and frequency of light that your strawberry or rocket or whatever crop you're growing may require. You can use machine learning to really optimize the amount of water, nutrients, and light that each crop requires, and then produce food in the area where humans are living in a rather small space and with a really low amounts of water and other resources as well. So the Chinese have landed small greenhouses on the moon in preparation for crews, you would guess, from seeing this kind of testing. And this indeed is a picture from the now bankrupt Mars One project on what the greenhouses on Mars may look like. I'll return to that topic in a minute. So that's a basic outline of how we would think about providing the basic resources which are so beautifully abundant here on Earth. But as we leave Earth, we'll need to think about technological solutions to these basic resource requirements. And the drive to develop these kind of systems, in fact, benefits Earth because we need to become more efficient in food production. We need to become more efficient in our accessing of solar energy. We need to become more efficient in our wastewater management. And all of this will be essential for Mars and hugely beneficial for Earth. Now, data, I think, as we've learned in the past couple of years, communication is really the backbone of our societal operations, whether it's chatting to friends and family, keeping in touch with our employers or our work colleagues or our networks of partners and whatever endeavors we are busy with, communications is really crucial. So on Mars, additionally, we will need 3D printing blueprints to print things that are broken. We will need software updates for, updating the systems that we brought with us from Earth. We will need perhaps some counseling sessions with people back on Earth to give advice on how to come out of some kind of issue. So communication will be critical, and satellites, as here on Earth, will be able to relay data between the two planets. So when we think of life beyond Earth, we do require a kind of dome, because breathable air is a luxury that we have here on Earth, but that is not present as we go beyond Earth, neither in the vacuum of space nor on Mars, where the atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide. So living under this kind of dome will be the way that we do it. But I think living in cities, you know, people do spend a lot of times in air-conditioned areas, whether that's in your office or in a mall or even in a gym. So these kind of activities will happen under the dome on Mars. But a great aspect of having such an enclosed society is that we can really monitor resources. We will really know how many liters per person per day. We'll really know how many cubic meters we need to grow X amount of nutrients to provide food for the community there, in a way that we've never really, you know, narrowed down on Earth, because we have this abundance. On Mars, we'll really have an idea of exactly how much resources are required to power a society. And this is a crucial issue here on Earth. Our population continues to grow. Already, we have shocking statistics of lack of access to basic resources. Around 2 billion of our around 8 billion population, a quarter of our humans, do not have access to clean, safe water. So these kind of issues face us here on Earth, in the space station and on Mars, but it may just be the kinds of system developed for Mars that provide solutions for us back on Earth, because of this really accurate overview of how much input is coming into the system and how much waste is being produced. Very importantly, how this waste is being put back into the system, and therefore being transformed from waste into useful resources. So resource management is going to be a critical part, and personally I envisage blockchain replacing perhaps the sort of profit-driven money system that we currently live in. You know, this is an interesting question that I don't have time to go into, but do we need money on Mars? Is the current profit-driven financial system one that we want to reproduce as we leave Earth? And if not, what is an alternative? So when people talk about new economic systems here on Earth, it usually becomes quite an emotional conversation. People think communism is the only alternative to capitalism. Of course, this is not the case. But Mars is a really interesting thought experiment. Like, if we could rethink the way that we trade goods, the way that we operate on a daily basis in terms of resources, how would we design that system from scratch? Could we design something that's not greed-driven? Could we design something that's not profit-driven? And what would that look like? So that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, and I'd love to leave time for some questions or some chat afterwards. So let me move on. And here's another whole nother story potentially to open up, but where would we get resources from on Mars? Are we going to mine the surface? Are we going to dig 6-kilometer deep platinum mines like the Iponeng mine here in South Africa in order to access different rare metals and minerals that we need? The answer would, in my opinion, be no. We would naturally access rocks from the asteroid belt, which don't need to be dug 6 kilometers out of the crust of a rocky, hard planet, but simply plucked out of the vacuum of space, processed en route and delivered in their purified form, a cubic block of platinum, diamond, you know, you name it. In the asteroid belt, there are all sorts of resources that are available. If we can just open our minds as to where we extract resources, I think we will realize that disrupting the surface of Earth, disrupting the living ecosystems on the surface of Earth, this is not the way to extract resources. These should be protected, and resources can be extracted from the asteroid belt, which lies just beyond Mars. So in the backyard for a Martian community, there are all sorts of resources in the asteroid belt. So that was sort of the first half of my story, and we've taken quite a broad perspective of being grateful for the resources that are abundant here on Earth, but also keeping in mind that with our increasing population and our increasing requirement for resources, you know, I don't know how many iPads each child will need in 20 years or whatever technology we'll be using then, but we are experiencing population growth and an increased use of resources. And we currently live on one planet, which is buckling under the strain that our society is putting on it. Climate change, The increased risk of pandemics is predicted, both of these, due to our impact on the biosphere of our planet. You know, our industry is resulting in a species extinction event. It's impacting the natural balance of the environment that sustains us, and our resource consumption is really at the heart of the challenges that we need to solve in the next few decades. So back in 2019, when the Mars One project, which I was a part of, declared bankruptcy, I decided I cannot wait for an investor, perhaps or perhaps not, to invest in Mars One. I believe so strongly in exploration. I believe so strongly that through exploration, we will get new insights into solving problems here on Earth, that I quit my job in the corporate world and established the Proudly Human organization. Very broadly, you know, to think about things that make us feel proud about being human, and to, you know, increase and collaborate these kind of activities. But kind of specifically, it's about providing basic resources for every human, no matter what planet we're on. So we can look at the conditions on Earth, which are, you know, pleasant. In fact, we think of oxygen as the major components of our atmosphere, but nitrogen is the primary component. These are all considerations when moving planets. You know, exactly what kind of environment are we looking at as we think of exploring the surface of Mars. So that's Earth with a gravity of 1, let's call it. Next, we can look at Venus. So here we've got a bit of a problem with the pressure. So that's 100 times higher pressure than here on Earth. Never mind the pressure, the temperatures are 500 degrees Celsius. So when we look at our two next door neighbor planets, Venus and Mars, Venus is going to be tricky. To land on the surface would require materials that we don't currently have. So in terms of exploration, if we are going to explore beyond our planet, Mars is a natural candidate. It's rather cold, especially for South Africans. Thinking about -60 might seem impossible, but of course populations in the far north and research teams in the far south do experience temperatures of -60, -70, and even as low as -90. That's the coldest ever recorded on Earth. So in terms of testing infrastructure, there are places on Earth where we can actually test these kind of temperatures. The atmosphere is carbon dioxide, but this is a resource for growing food, for example. The iron in the surface content we can also access. The pressure is low, which is easier to deal with than high pressure, and the gravity is less. So carrying around a pack of oxygen to breathe with, it will be easy to walk, you know, with just more than 1/3 of the gravity on Earth, which means you can jump 3 times higher, lift 3 times as much, and in fact, you'll be slightly taller than you would be on Earth. So if that's a consideration for anyone wanting to get involved, there's even implications that a lower gravitational field may be correlated with living longer. So taller, living longer, Mars is looking like a great candidate if we want to explore beyond Earth. So I mentioned there are parts of Earth that are comparable in some ways to Mars. These are great places to train. And this is what Proudly Human is looking to do, is implement off-world experiments in the most extreme environments on Earth to develop solutions for access to basic resources for people already living in harsh conditions here on Earth. Also, with the power of inspiration, to think about the first communities living beyond Earth. So I think for the young people growing up on planet Earth, you know, it's one thing to tell them you need to manage your wastewater better because thanks to our abundant lifestyles, we're probably going to run out of fresh water in Southern Africa. That's one way to tell the story. Another is to say, when we get to Mars, there will be no water from the start. So let's start to develop systems that can manage water extremely efficiently so that we can simultaneously improve living standards for people on Earth while designing cutting-edge African design systems for life beyond Earth, which will be, you know, extreme in the same way that some communities living in, for example, the Sahara or the Namib already experience. So Antarctica is great for the temperature. It's around -60, -70 in winter. And the isolation is probably the most important part of doing test experiments there, because if you're on the moon, you can get back to Earth in 3 days. If you're in the space station, you can get back to Earth in less than 24 hours. But if you're in Antarctica for the winter, you are stuck there for 9 months. There are no helicopters, no airplanes, no boats that can access the whole continent for the entire duration of winter, which is basically 9 months. So in terms of the isolation and the temperature, Antarctica is perfect. I'm not going to show videos now, but please check out our Proudly Human YouTube channel if you'd like to see the short video of our location recce to Antarctica in 2019. I also had the chance to visit the Oman Desert to understand the logistics, the requirements for setting up camps in extremely dry, extremely hot parts of Earth. And here, the main comparison to Mars, as you can imagine, will be the scarcity of water. So in Antarctica, what you need is a power to keep you warm and basically a spade to dig up ice that you can then melt to drink. In the desert, it's very different. We will need wastewater management systems, atmospheric water generators, etc., to generate water where water is not abundant. So those are some of the analogs and some of the regions on Earth that we are looking at towards training people and also developing infrastructure for the first communities beyond Earth. So the idea is, after we've done several experiments in the desert, we also are going to do several experiments under the ocean. We're going to take a habitat, sink it, and live in it. So this is probably the closest to being off Earth in terms of needing to put on a suit before leaving the habitat. And yes, that would be going scuba diving for the day and then coming back into the habitat. That's the plan for the ocean mission. The Antarctic mission, as I've explained, would be for the duration of the winter, most of the year, in other words, surviving extreme cold and managing our food production and water management while we're there. So once we've done several of these experiments, we would like to have collected enough data and have enough knowledge on human reaction to living in extreme environments to advise for the first communities on the Moon and Mars. And let me take a short break here to talk about the developments. If you haven't already heard, I'm sure you've seen some aspect of it. 3 missions have arrived from Earth to Mars last month. That was the United Arab Emirates. Their first attempt to Mars successful, and just 10 years after launching the country's first satellite. They have now arrived successfully in orbit around Mars with the HOPE mission. They will be doing research from their orbits around Mars. We've had China also arrive into orbit around Mars, and China will be releasing and launching their rover to the surface of Mars in May. So in a couple of months, we'll be able to watch the Chinese rover also land, hopefully successfully, on the surface. And if you haven't already looked up the Perseverance NASA rover, please do, because the footage of the surface of Mars is really spectacular and really similar to a location in Namibia where we have just visited. So I'll speak a bit more about that in a second. But we can see if I'm right or not, but I believe humans will be back on the Moon within the next decade. We've got NASA's Artemis program, as well as China collaborating with NASA, collaborating with Russia, to have crewed presence on the Moon within the next 5 to 10 years. Mars is more ambitious, slightly further away. We've, of course, never landed crew there before, but Elon Musk has said in 2024, SpaceX will be ready to deliver the first cruise to Mars. So we will have to wait and see if SpaceX is on schedule. But South African-born Elon Musk has certainly made huge strides and is probably the human leading the drive to getting to Mars, being the richest person on the planet, or has he now been overtaken by Jeff Bezos? One of the richest people on the planet certainly gives him the resources to be able to back up that statement that he will have humans on the surface of Mars before 2030. So super exciting, and that's where Proudly Human steps in, not only to develop the systems for the Moon and Mars, but also to think about being more resource efficient here on Earth to improve living standards for people already living in harsh conditions on our own planet Earth. So this is a bit of an obnoxious photo of me in a jet going to Antarctica. I show this photo because I think all of our worlds shifted quite drastically at the end of 2019 coming into 2020, because after having a furious travel schedule, I think I'd covered the distance to the Moon and back during 2019 by airplane around Earth. So practically living in and out of airports. my world became quite different in 2020, where my boyfriend and I built this cabin in a infrastructure-free forest. So there's no road here, there's no power, there's a river, but zero human infrastructure. We had to carry all of the stuff along a 1.8 kilometer trail. It's around 2 tons, so that took us around 300 hours, we estimate. But in the end, we had a gas oven to bake bread even. We brought down the guitar for some music. We carried, with much ado, some of my furniture from Cape Town. And this is in the Tsitsikamma area. The queen-size mattress was definitely the hardest thing to carry down a mountain trail for 2 kilometers, just with 2 of us. So this is where I lived for most of 2020. It was extremely tough. I've run ultra marathons, and this was way harder because it was wake up every morning, work for 10 hours, fall asleep, wake up and do it again. Extremely demanding physically, but also I think most importantly, it was a humbling experience. So, you know, this was an exercise for us to, you know, experiment with building infrastructure from scratch in a beautiful but extremely remote environment. That's our little house there. But let's remember, of course, that many people live, you know, from walking water from a river daily for their various showering activities. Many people live with far less resources than we carried down here daily in homes that they've built themselves from whatever they could find. So this was really a humbling experience, I think, dealing with your own composting toilet, carrying your buckets of water from the river to shower every night, making a fire to heat the water because it was winter, of course, as we went into the lockdown. Yeah, so a humbling experience, I would say, but a beautiful one where we experienced life with so many different creatures living in this river valley. How beautiful, yeah. Here's the summary. So it was actually more than 1 kilometer in the end, but it took us around 300 hours. So that would have been 2 months of like 5 hours a day on average. But in fact, we condensed it to like a month in the end. 2 tons of stuff we carried down there, and we tried to do it as cheaply as possible. So it was around 25,000 Rand in the end, including our batteries and things that we charged phones with. We didn't produce food down there yet. That's the plan for next. And our communications were extremely bad, mobile networks. So this was another challenge of trying to stay online during the lockdown. So that was, you know, phase 1. That was really experimenting. What is it like to arrive in an area with no infrastructure and build an entire habitat from scratch, and then to live in this habitat for 6 months or more, work from this habitat in spite of the poor connection, in spite of, you know, maybe not having clothes that you've washed yourself in the river. You know, these are all considerations. So we spend time there still on and off. It's a really beautiful place to visit. But this was really the first phase before implementing a similar kind of plan, arriving in a location, setting up infrastructure from scratch, living and working there, and then packing it all up to have zero impact on the environment. And this is the kind of data and the kind of knowledge and the kind of experience that people will have arriving on the moon or Mars for the very first time. So as I said, I'm just back from a really beautiful, stunning, stark, harsh, dry, hot environment that is the Namib Desert. It's the oldest desert on the planet. There's been no water there for 55 million years. So this dune is actually on Mars, but if you've been to Namibia, you'll recognize similar dune formations there. So there are parallels between deserts on Earth and what we see on Mars in terms of having had water in the past, but no longer. So that's a bit of a clue as to what's coming next. We are going to launch our off-world project this year in a desert near us, not so far. We're yet to announce the specifics, but I think you can guess the region. Water management is going to be crucial, and these are some of the sponsors and technology partners that we have involved, providing our solar power, our atmospheric water generator, which will feed into our agricultural system. All of our water output, our wastewater, will be managed and fed back into the system, and we'll be monitoring all of these devices through local sensors and also through satellite communication back to ground control, and we'll be making a documentary as we go. So our satellite connection will be crucial for the footage that we create on a daily basis. So we opened applications for our Off-World project. We are looking for diverse people with diverse backgrounds, with stories to tell, resilient people who would be able to spend up to a couple of months in an extreme location. So if this sparks some interest, please do check out our website, proudlyhuman.com. We are looking for engineers. We are looking for medics. We're also looking for artists. We're also looking for podcasters. We're also looking for chefs. We're looking for people with the kind of skills that can contribute to a community, which means all of you. So maybe it's not your cup of tea to go and live in the desert for around 40 days, but if it is, or if you know of anyone who would find this exciting, our applications are open on proudlyhuman.com. So I think we've had a lot of challenges in the last couple of years, but our technology is also our tool. And because of our global communications network, because of the power of communication and data, I believe this is the opportunity to really be part of a revolution in thinking. And this revolution is something we are in desperate need of here on Earth. We need to rethink the way we are doing things. We need to create a future that we can be proud of in order to pass down the legacy of our efforts to the next generations. And I certainly don't expect that all humans will find traveling to Mars something fun or something interesting. But I would like to say that exploration is a powerful tool to learn new things. And each one of us knows this in whatever path in life we are walking, whether it's, getting out of our comfort zone, traveling. Okay, hopefully we can travel again soon, but getting out of our comfort zone and exploring can really be, learning a new language, meeting new people, exploring the way different cultures or communities approach certain things, the list goes on. Exploring new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things, I think has really been the powerful message behind the pandemic we've been experiencing. And there's a whole new world out there. This is Alice in Wonderland, one of my favorite books as a child. We should really, the time is now. It always seems impossible until it's done, but we've demonstrated our adaptability during this period, and let's continue to adapt, to change, to rethink, to remodel, to rewire the way that we think going forward, because we have a lot of challenges coming up. But certainly there's so much beauty in humanity that we should also celebrate and protect and sustain as we go forward for next generations. So that's it from me. I hope we have a couple of minutes for a question or two. I'm going to scan through the chat. I'm not sure if we can have an audio for some questions, but I'll have a look at the comments. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure sharing this day with all of you. And yeah, have a great afternoon further.
Dr. Adriana, thank you so much for those key insights. I know you can actually see the questions as I come up next to you, but just before you pick one, because we do need to switch to our panel, the key insights that I have taken from you is that gratitude is key. I think as we're all here today engaging with one another, the privilege of life in the past 2 years is something that is no longer fickle. And thank you for reminding us about the need to be grateful in all that we do. You also reminded us that human beings and the planet need to live concurrently. We need to take care of the planet as it takes care of us, because no living organism can actually survive without water. And I think we take it for granted because we have these resources that are there. But I want to call us all into thinking about the key thing that you've said around the opportunity that this project with regards to transitioning or the possibility of living in Mars has brought forth questions that are related to, do we need money on Mars? And is there a way to rethink how we trade and share resources? And could we actually redesign a world that is not profit-driven, that is equitable? So an opportunity to start from scratch. I definitely walk away with that important question, and I want to ponder on that beyond today. But Dr. Adriana, I just want to ask you if you can pick a question that has been posted for you and just answer one question, because we now need to transition to the panel. But greatly, greatly appreciated your insights. Thank you.
Thanks, Nomonde. That was so brilliantly summarized. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I wanted to check, can you see your questions? I don't want to make an assumption that you can, because sometimes the tech fails us. I love it, but could you see questions?
Yeah, I can see some aquaponics is definitely something we're thinking about, but related to the points that you called that you focused on now, I'd say let me leave everybody with this as a thought experiment. So maybe you will apply for the Off-World project with Proudly Human. Maybe I'll see you on Mars, but if not, let's take a minute to do a thoughts experiment. What would your project proposal be if you were to apply for such a mission? And even for me, this was not even for me, but I'm a physicist, but I'm a quantum physicist, which is not really useful for anything. So this was a real soul-searching exercise for me to think, what will I do on Mars? Because we've got no quantum computers there, or, you know. So I had to think, me as a person, fundamentally, what would I contribute when I wake up during the day to support the team, going to bed and thinking about it at night and reflecting on what this community means? What would my contribution to such a community be? And in thinking about applying, our hobbies would come to light, our skills and our expertise would come to light. But I think at our core, what do we hope to contribute to society during our lifetime? Is like it's a rare opportunity to reflect. If you could boil that down into a proposal of why you would be useful on Mars, that's one thing. But I think to just take a moment to reflect, you know, and put a proposal, you know, how do I contribute towards a better society through everything that I do through my life, whatever planet I'm on. For me, that was an extremely important learning experience. You know, building this house in the forest was part of that. So perhaps that's a nice point of reflection. But please, if there are any other questions, contact me on Twitter or wherever. And looking forward to the panel. And thanks, Nomonde, for being a great host today. And thanks for having me.
Dr. Adriana, thank you so much. As usual, a great privilege to have heard your insights. This is the second time I'm hearing you speak, but new and deep, thought-provoking questions that I continue to walk away with today. So thank you very much, and wishing you a fantastic day further. Ladies and gentlemen, we now transition to the second business end of our day today, our panel discussion. I would like to welcome to our panel Ms. Nonhlanhla Shabalala, who's an IT executive as well as a board member for the Banking Institute of South Africa. Joining us today as well, we also have the privilege of an in-person presentation by Dr. Denisha, who's the Chief Information Officer for the City of Johannesburg. Amanda will also be joining our panel discussion today. And now for our esteemed audience joining us online, please may I kindly ask you to continue sending and posting your questions online. We would like this engagement to be as interactive as possible. So I will be taking questions from the online channel. I have been noting there's quite a few that have come through. So I'll be switching to that shortly. Now, my first question is to you, Amanda. Carlfred Broderick defines a transitional character as one who in a single generation changes the entire course of a lineage. The changes might be for good or ill, but the most noteworthy examples are those who grow up in an abusive, emotionally destructive environment and somehow find a way to metabolize the poison given to them and refuse to pass it on to future generations. They break the mold, and their contribution to humanity is to filter the destructiveness out of their own lineage so that the generations downstream will have a supportive foundation upon which to build productive lives. As an individual who fits and embodies this definition, what drove you to break from the mold? What is the call to action for leaders, both male and female, in order to allow us each to get to this point where we indeed have an inclusive society where women have an equal and meaningful seat at the table? I know this is a loaded question, Amanda, but as someone who fits this definition, we'd really love to hear your insights.
Thank you very much, Nomonde. I think that, you know, I made a personal decision to invest in myself with the great understanding that I need to know what is sitting inside of me, where have I come from, and how do all of those things that I experienced shape the leader that I am or the human being that I am. How do I show up in the world, and you know, what are the things that drive me? So I think I had this understanding that I knew I had to work very hard on redefining what my foundation was. So rebuilding that foundation, because I don't believe you can ever change anything around you or in your world if your sense of self hasn't shifted. And if you have come, as you said, from traumatic background, your idea of self is shaped by what other people did and said. So it was very important for me to craft my own idea of self. And I think that's really important for leaders to appreciate where we've come from, to invest in understanding what is sitting inside of us, because we really cannot spew out kindness, compassion, and love and caring for our people that we lead if we haven't confronted what's sitting inside of us and understand how we show up. And first of all, to also just give ourselves that love. So I think it's the mold we have to break is this perception that you can just become a great leader without ever having invested in who you are. And I think we also have, we need to be realistic and understand that because someone is a great technical expert or they've got great technical ability in their role, in their job, doesn't necessarily mean that equates to a great leader. And we have had many instances in large corporates and business where because somebody is so good at their job, they therefore get promoted to become a leader. But it's actually okay for leaders for some people to stay specialists and not leaders. So, and if you have that opportunity, please understand what the gap is. What do you need to work on to become a great leader? And I really think the mold we have to break as well is the barriers that we put in our own minds, particularly as women. We need to break the barriers that tell us we're not good enough and we do not deserve the best, because we do deserve the best. And we deserve the best, not just for ourselves, but also for the generations to come. So it's very important to not just think of just ourselves and what we're getting from it, but the understanding that someday we'll be gone. And what are we leaving behind? What is our legacy? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Tim. I think it's a very important point that you raise about the need for leaders to understand self. Because just because I might be an expert at my job does not necessarily mean that I can lead others. You actually made this point earlier when you spoke about the need not to break people as leaders, but to nurture individuals that actually are part of our teams, because you're nurturing future leaders. So that insight is actually quite critical. And thank you for that, Amanda. Noni, my next question is for you. Now, as an executive within financial services, as well as a board member for the Institute of Bankers in South Africa, you've had first-hand experience when it comes to the challenges that leaders often have to navigate through, particularly in 2020 and now moving into 2021, because COVID is still with us. So the issues we got last year continue now. Now, when it comes to navigating a stormy and contracted market, which needs to contend with customers who expect more for less, competitors who are on your neck, and regulators, as well as the interactions between all of these actors, has the process of finding answers to business questions in a COVID world been a challenge? And what would you like to start seeing as it pertains to digital inroads within the sector? So, Noni, I'll leave it there, but I have another question for you. But let me first give you this one to answer for us.
Thanks, Nomonde. Interesting question. It has been very challenging, whether it's within the financial services or as a member of the Bankers Institute. But what I see has happened over the last year is companies or organizations have had to reinvent or accelerate their digital transformation. And that has driven to organizations having to rethink or to drive an accelerated paces to ensure that they are thinking out of the box, or they're thinking of digital solutions to meet their customers' needs. What I would like to see going forward, or as part of this journey that we are all embarking, is I'd like to see these transformation journeys being led by females, because I think our voice and our input would be valuable, not only because we bring diversity into the solutioning, but because we need to create opportunities or create solutions that drive future fit, that are future fit, family fit, and society fit. And I really do think women are best placed to ensure that that happens. When I look at what we're celebrating today, I think it's important that we take this time to not only celebrate the strides we've taken so far, but also take this as an opportunity to challenge ourselves to make sure that we are in the driving seat as we tackle all these challenges going forward.
Noni, now that's actually a beautiful segue for me personally, because you spoke about the transformation journey that, I guess, not just financial services, but I would argue that the world would need to go through, right? And you're saying that you want to see a world which is actually led by females, right? Now, with that being said, and as a board member of the Banking Institute of South Africa, my question to you is, now, given this year's theme, right, which is around women in leadership, and our ambition of achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. My question to you, Noni, is do you think that we're doing enough as it pertains to financial inclusion for women? And I know that this dynamic is not just unique to South Africa, it's an issue and a challenge that exists worldwide. But from a South African point of view, I'd like to know if these are issues that you contend with as a board. And in addition to this, we've recently seen a CEO of one of our financial institutions resign, who was female. In a world where we have a shortage of female leaders, I'd like your perspective with regards to what do we need to do to stop bleeding female leaders, and how do we create a more inclusive financial sector for women?
All of our speakers today have spoken with great examples of where we're seeing women take the lead and do it really, really well. Even locally in South Africa, we've had many examples of banks being led by females. I'm part of, as you mentioned, the South African Institute of Bankers. We are led by females as well there. And all of these are great examples, just reiterating that female leadership should not be an exception, but the rule. We should be seeing more and more leaders, more and more female leaders taking the helm. And it's important that it's not something that's done as a by the way, or it's done by mistake, but it should be an intentional thing that's been put in place. As we continue to stride forward and wanting to create more digital solutions that are financially inclusive as well, we need to ensure that we create solutions by us, for us. And the only way we can do that is by ensuring that the right voices are at the table, making the right decisions. I'm appreciative to be part of a board where we understand that it's important that we create an institute that thinks about how the banker's future remains, how the banker remains future fit, and how we create opportunities for bankers in South Africa and opportunities for them to grow. And I think some of the solutioning and the creative ways we are wanting to do this are only coming through because we have that diversity in our leadership. I think as a financial institution, or as a financial institute community, we all need to really introspectively think about how are we ensuring that that is pervasive across all our banks, across all of our institutes as well. Because if we don't see the female leader rise up in the ranks, we are missing out on an opportunity to hear the right voices in the right forums. As you've mentioned, we've had some really good leaders, and we've lost some really good leaders. And I think for me, the only way we're going to change that so that we don't keep losing these leaders is to ensure that the pipeline creating these leadership opportunities is packed with leaders. And I want to remind ourselves again that the theme today is around fighting for equality, is around celebrating equality for women in this COVID-19 world. And if this theme should not be something that we celebrate today and it ends today, but rather something that each of one of us take into everything we do, so that we ensure that there's equality around our tables and there's equality in all our leaderships. And if there isn't, we question why that equality is not there. Because if we want to create the best solutions for our societies, then we need to ensure that our leadership, our teams are reflective of that society as well.
Noni, thank you for that insight. And you actually echoed a message that Amanda raised in her keynote address, which is that females leading should no longer be the exception, it should be the rule. Creating equitable society should be something that we strive for every day. And as we call ourselves to action, particularly with this topic, it should not be something that we just talk about today, but it should be something we're championing every day. I loved what you said, and it also leaned into what Amanda said earlier, which was speaking about female entrepreneurs and the struggles that they face. But you mentioned that we need to create solutions by us, for us. And I love the synergy with regards to echoing the same message in the entrepreneurial sector, as well as in the corporate sector, Thank you for those insights, Noni. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to continue to encourage you to please post questions for our panel because we'd like this to be as interactive as possible. My next question is for Dr. Denisha, who's joining us today. Like I mentioned before, Dr. Denisha is the Chief Information Officer for the City of Johannesburg. Dr. Denisha, machines have demonstrated their abilities to help shine some light on the chaos around the world. And sometimes, if they do not provide us with direct answers, they have the ability to give us clues that help us get to solutions. Executives and leaders using artificial intelligence to help them when it comes to attempting to resolve complex business problems. I would like your insights with regards to how our country is perhaps leveraging artificial intelligence to deal with the many societal challenges that we continue to contend with from a South African point of view. I want to know how the government, having experienced what we experienced last year with regards to children in communities where they do not have much, were excluded when we had to transition to online learning, versus children who had privilege and who were in private schools, were able to continue with our learning journeys. We know that South Africa is viewed as the most unequal society in the world. But my question now for us is that government often refers to the fourth industrial revolution. Please, can you explain to us if there is a plan in place to tackle the digital divide, which mainly impacts women and has impacted children as we continue to see? And if there is such a plan in place, and it does exist, can you briefly outline for us what these plans are and how they will continue to benefit women and children?
Thank you, Nwande. I think it's a wonderful question. And then let me start with the first part. I just think there's so many parts to the question. I think firstly, artificial intelligence is definitely poised, rightly so, specifically when it comes to education. And if you look at the plans that government has when it comes to what we experienced with COVID-19 last year, from kids that were in a private school versus kids that were in public schools, government, we have several initiatives that are running through for expanding broadband coverage. We are working with various service providers as well as regulators to see how can we change that. The other element is looking at data. How do we actually, make data a lot more deeper and broadly accessible, especially when it comes to, rural communities where the right to education is the same as the right to education of a child living in a city. So as government, yes, there's a lot of plans that we have in place, implementations, there's currently discussions happening in place. If you look at some of we're re-collaborating our frameworks and legislation because AI provides a unique element of inclusivity. It's actually an equalizer, technologically so. The other element is we're looking at very clear roadmaps, because big things can only be done with small steps. For a city as big as Johannesburg, for example, we have to have roadmaps in place that have specific milestones that we have to reach. And the other element is looking at how do we bring all the policies together in place, a good mix of policies with the right experts at the table. And I think women are perfectly suited to be at this table because as women naturally so, we are multi-purposeful. We are not, genetically, our genetic makeup, we can think of a million things in one and be able to integrate those things in our minds. And I think that's what we need from AI because that's what's going to expand AI to another level that we need. The other element in terms of what is government doing in respect of the digital divide with women specifically, I think there's a lot of programs happening. For example, the City of Joburg, we've got a smart city initiative. We look at various calls that we put out there, to the public on various SMMEs, Black-owned SMMEs to actually help the economy, where they will come through, do proof of concepts, and if the city is happy, we then take it forward. Obviously, there are processes in place for that. Also, we're looking at, as a government nationally, overall, we look at, different sectors. How is the healthcare sector going to become more improved in the service from a government point of view? I think a great example is the vaccine system, which we just rolled out. We were able to do it. The back end systems very complex, but here we are. We're rolling out the vaccines. People are getting it, and it's happening faster and faster as we move through that process. So that's a very good example. Another example is looking at the financial services sector. We want to make women a lot more inclusive, give them accessibility so that they can compete on a global stage and transformation can start happening. And I think I'm a firm believer of implementation. I really would like to see implementation being measured, because we can come and we can have platforms, we can talk about this, but just like we have legislation almost for our JSE listed companies, like the King 4 report, where we have to report on what did organizations do to help the environment. Why don't we have the same to hold organizations accountable for how many women did you bring into your organization, not just at lower levels, but at leadership levels? Let's be able to measure that. Let's be able to complement the companies and the organizations that are doing that. Let's be able to hold the guys that are not doing that. Let's hold them accountable, for that, because as the theme goes, we have to start implementation. We need to talk about how is this transformation going to happen? What are the frameworks we're going to use to ensure organizations are accountable, to make sure that women are included? Thank you.
Dr. Denisha, thank you so much for that insight. I think your insights are actually quite refreshing, and I really hope what you've said now around moving to a point where implementation is measured, because I know that our government has a very bad rap often. So it's refreshing to know that there are all these initiatives on the go at the moment to try and solve for the issue of having this digital divide that we need to contend with. But I would like to switch over to the questions that have been coming through from our audience. And I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to now answer the question that has actually come through now from Valentine. Now, Amanda, I'll start with you as someone who's been an executive in a corporate organization and as someone who is leading a very successful business, because the issues would still be the same. The question is, how do we start multiplying female talent in the workplace to ensure a continuous process of nurturing and improving our streamline of talent coming into the organization in order to make sure that we can sustainably close the gap that exists between senior leadership roles as well as junior leadership roles, because that is what we often find in most organizations. So Amanda, if I may give you a minute to answer that question, and then immediately afterwards, Noni, and then Dr. Denisha.
Thank you, Nomonde, and I appreciate that question from Valentine. It is, and I think that there's a, with every single thing that you are trying to change, you have to be deliberate about it. You have to consciously, every single day, wake up and say, I am working towards changing this. And us getting girl children into be the workplace or business is a deliberate effort every single day. So, why not take your girl children to a hackathon on a weekend? Why not take them to a robotics seminar? Why not log into something that they can get to be exposed to, that is traditionally not something that girls at a young age would be exposed to? So I really think that if we're not deliberate about building from the start, from the ground up, remember, we'll only change the status quo when we start to build and nurture the same leaders we'd like to see and the same people we'd like to see come up. And let's be conscious of our makeup in organizations, because typically what happens is some women get the opportunity and become, they get the top roles. And then you've got this middle layer of staff and employees that are not women. A large, significant part of it, there are no women. And then you get this junior level where there's a lot of women. So ours is to deliberately have succession planning in place. And that's something I'm really, really passionate about, have always been, be it in corporate or in my own business or helping clients. It's unlocking the talent that you already have, because you do have the talent. It's just, people like to hide behind this notion of there is no talent, or, we're not finding the right people. I mean, there were times back in the days, and I'm pretty sure it will start to happen again when things open up, where organizations go to universities and specifically seek out specific or certain qualifications, and those qualifications, they have a requirement that it's girls. So there's everything has got to be deliberate. We can't leave it to chance. We can't say it's going to resolve itself, because it won't. And I said it earlier, every single person that's that's in a position to do something about changing our world and changing the things we do not like should do that. And you heard me talk about, belonging to these clubs, and these clubs that open up opportunities for others. The great thing about what COVID has given us and the opportunity, I mean, in spite of the loss and the significant hardship, there's this opportunity that now we no longer have to go and have Friday drinks at a smelly joint, or have a Sunday braai with people we don't even like. So now we can redefine those rules and decide, how do we find talent? How do we spot business? And I think it's a great opportunity that we really shouldn't miss, because we can redefine the world as we see it going forward. So absolutely, I mean, I think we can change it, but we must be deliberate about it.
Thank you, Amanda. Nani, over to you.
Thanks, Valentine, for this question. Totally agree with what Amanda's saying. It all starts with being deliberate. I think it's important as women in corporate, whether you're a leader or you're growing in your career, you can't wait for permission. I've sat on many transformation committees and different forums in many different organizations, where we sit in these committees and we debate, we can see the gap, we know where the issues are, and we almost wait for the permission or for someone to tell us, now you can go and act on it. You need to, if you are seeing the gap, call it out. We are celebrating today because we all see that we are powerful. We all know the power women can add to organizations. So let's not wait for someone to give us the permission to take that ownership or to take that lead. Where you're seeing gaps, if you're in a leadership role or an opportunity where you're seeing that we are not giving the opportunities, let's call it out and be intentional about how we're creating those opportunities. If you're sitting in a team and you're wanting to see yourself grow, and you're wanting to understand, how can I get to the next level, and you don't understand, then don't wait for someone to come and ask you. Go and tap that woman who's the leader's shoulder and ask, how can I get to where you are? Or the man's shoulder and say, how can I do what you're doing? Because if we're going to wait for permission, I think it's going to be a long wait. We're going to keep seeing these exceptional cases of one or two people making it, and keep asking ourselves, how do I get there? So if I can leave it with that, Valentine, let's not wait for someone to grant us the permission. We're using today's talk and the celebration that we're having today is to tell you that you have the permission to ask for equality, because we deserve that.
Thank you, Nani. Dr. Tanisha, may I get your views on this, please?
Thank you, Nomonde. I think definitely, aligned to my colleagues, we cannot fold up our hands and wait. No one's going to do it for us. We need to take this initiative and really, even if it's one woman, bringing another one woman with you, imagine the impact that will have collectively, overall, and I think we must also give up, within ourselves, the queen bee syndrome, where, once there's one there, that's all we want is one there. How much more powerful will our collective voice be if there is more women there with us? How much more fruitful will it be? Where, it's not a lonely road anymore. There are colleagues you can lean on. There are colleagues that you can sound with, soundboard anything on. So I think definitely, if we can challenge each of ourselves personally inside to say, Take one woman. Let's start small and then do big. Take one woman with you, whichever woman that may be, but at least one. Every woman leader in this globe, if you take one woman with you, imagine the impact we will make. Thank you.
Love that. Take one woman with you. Again, echoing what we heard earlier around if you have an opportunity to change the life of a woman, do it. Do not hesitate, do it. I'd like to switch over to some of the comments that have actually come through. In fact, Dr. Tanisha, I have a question for you here from Busi, who's joining us online. So her comment is, Dr. Tanisha, I appreciate the honorable intent and plans regarding government's AI rollout and bridging the digital divide. However, how do we accelerate and prioritize these initiatives to provide just-in-time responses, given the rapid pace of exponential change within the fourth industrial revolution?
I think there are many accelerations happening already. We do have a forum, for example, for implementing 4IR at national government level, as well as brought down to provincial level, as well as brought down to local government level. So those plans are there. Acceleration means how do we do this faster, get our committees together, get the implementers together, run the innovations quicker, shorten the timelines. And I think, just from what, where we were before COVID to now, and I'll give you a very, very pragmatic example. In before COVID times, we had we didn't think about how we'd had to get a laptop to every single person, to be able to work, remotely from home. We are not the other organizations like first world mature economies like your Harvards and so forth. They would just roll out the laptops. We come from a deeply unequal society. So even though you would roll out a laptop, there's still a problem with network. There's still a problem with data. There's still a problem with the costs of the data. So there were other elements that we still had to think of. We still had to close the gap on to even allow people, every single person, to work from home. It wasn't just a matter of a rollout like you would find in a mature and developed economy. Therefore, as much as, yes, artificial intelligence is there, we are putting chatbots on all of our systems to help, people with very monotonous queries, for example, in utilities billing and so forth. But we've done a lot, looking at the back-end systems alone and what we needed to do to make sure that organizations could continue in the public sector, that organizations could actually, continue working and producing the results that is required. And the vaccine system is a good example of that as well. The complexity that it comes with in terms of the back-end systems to make that portal possible. We know because we've been working on the back ends with that. We've been integrating, we've been making sure there's partnerships with the private sector as well. So we are accelerating, and we need to communicate that acceleration a lot more, and we need to do more acceleration. And there's definitely a lot happening overall in government to accelerate digital transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Tanisha. I just would like to, as usual, running fast out of time, and I would like to give our panel an opportunity to give us closing remarks. But before I switch over to them, I would like to thank you for posting comments and questions online, and I'd like to read some of them. So from Rowena Williams, truly inspirational woman, completely agree. We had a phenomenal panel here with us today, and our guest speakers, Amanda and Dr. Adriana, truly leave us inspired. Valentine has thanked the panel for answering his questions. You've given him food for thought. Busi, completely agree with you. We should be lifting as we rise. And that message continues to be echoed by our panel and our guest speakers today. Wendy says, shoo, quite interesting presentations from all speakers. I am full and quite inspired. Pambi Limbogoto. And then Alufeshi, give women accessibility to compete at a global stage. Busi Noni has said she loves your view around future fit and family fit solutions. COVID has highlighted the gender inequality of our society and workplaces. And she further says research has shown that women have had to disproportionately take on family care roles at the high cost of having to forego career advancement. So, this notion of the triple shift that women continuously contend with. The concept of future fit, Spongile is reiterating that to ensure that Africa as a continent strives to ensure that we are future fit. Busi for Amanda says, Amanda completely agreed with the points you've made in that not every great specialist is destined to be a leader. Leadership requires an additional set of competencies. Therefore, one must do the work to understand what those are and to plug in where required. Mumtaz says leaders must have a love for people and understanding. Thank you for reminding us of that, Amanda, because too often specialists are promoted to leadership roles to their team's detriment. Dr. Adriana, in her absence, we've got so many amazing comments here. It was truly amazing, so different, so thought-provoking. Thank you so much for that trip around the world. Thank you, Dr. Adriana, for your insights and thought-provoking impact. Great perspectives that have been shown. Thank you, Dr. Adriana. Now, I have 5 minutes left, and with my 5 minutes, I would like to, within 60 seconds, to each of our panel members, to leave us with words of motivation and their call to action to each of us tuning in today who has the ability to influence, even in your own space. Influence does not mean that you have people reporting into you. Leadership is leadership of self first. Servant leadership is equally leadership. So, without further ado, Amanda, I would just like your thoughts, what you'd like to leave us with today, and your call to action for each of us.
Thank you so much. It's been such a great day. I have absolutely enjoyed myself. I think, firstly, I mean, we've seen the example that Dr. Adriana showing us in 1997 when she was 13 years old, the things that she already dreamt about. And today she's a quantum physicist who's literally living out the dream. I cannot think of a better example of how we should be deliberate about the human beings we'd like to see in this world. We are raising children either as parents or caregivers. We have people in our care, in our home, in our businesses. I mean, not just in our homes, in our businesses, in the workplace. We are custodians of people's dreams. And I think it is really incumbent upon us to take that seriously. It's a role we should never, ever undermine, because we can either break or build up that person. And I think a leader's role is to build. And if you cannot build another person, please get out of the way and allow others to do the job. It's not a failure on your part. It's actually an incredible, courageous thing to do, to say, this is not meant for me. And I think we have to be really honest about what our abilities are as leaders. And I say, as women, never underestimate the competence that you have built. Never underestimate that you have got what it takes to be great. You already have achieved so much. All you have to do is just pause and reflect on that and see how far you have come, and realize that not even the sky has been the limit, and there's so much more still to accomplish. And just go for it, be bold and courageous and brave. And so what if you don't get it right the first time? You'll just try again, because the one thing that COVID times have taught us, for as long as we're still breathing, we still have the ability to change our world. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Amanda. Noni, please, may I have your thoughts?
I think, firstly, just well done to all the speakers today. Some great insights, great input as well. If I can leave everybody listening with one thing for me, or one note, is COVID-19 or 2020 was challenging for all of us. But from that, I think it's also given us an opportunity to challenge the norms. We need to take this opportunity to challenge the norms, to be in the forefront of defining what the new norm looks like. We shouldn't use this as an opportunity to think that this is it, there's nothing else we can do, but rather take this opportunity to say, where else can what do I see as a norm going forward, as the workplace has become the home, and as that line between family and home, family and work is blurring. We have an opportunity to define what that future looks like for ourselves, and to define what it means to be a woman in corporate, to define all of those new norms for ourselves. So take these challenges not as necessarily as a setback, but rather as an opportunity to redesign what the future can look like for ourselves. I think more importantly for us in South Africa, we have the opportunity here to take from learnings from all over the world, from all these different parts, from how other people are doing it, to make sure that our solutions are home fit as well for our own homes, because we have our own special problems and challenges, but that also means that we can come up with the best solutions for ourselves as well.
Thank you very much, Noni, for that. Dr. Tanisha, may I kindly ask for your closing remarks?
Sure. Thank you, Nomonde. I think it's been an absolutely fantastic day. Thank you to all our wonderful speakers and participants. Really enjoyed the day. I think, you know, as Amanda did mention in her keynote address, the boundaries that we as women create are actually those in our own minds. There are no boundaries. You are absolutely limitless. You can become the dream that you envision yourself to be. And as women, practically in industry, in corporate, in your own companies, at home, you know, let's lift each other. Let's lift each other up one at a time, one at a time. And I think that would make a huge collective difference globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Janisha. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my esteemed panel, our incredible keynote speakers, Amanda Dambuza and Dr. Adriana, for the amazing insights which we take away with us today. And while the challenges are many, the next generation of women need to see women leading without hesitation and not women constantly defending their seat at the table. And to a large extent, we have been provided with living evidence of South African trailblazers who are leading by example. So it is possible. We have numerous data points. Ours is to champion this issue and ensure that indeed, by the time we take our last breath, we continue to fight for an equitable society. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Wired4Women Advisory Board, I would like to thank you for the privilege of your time. Indeed, it has been an honor, and happy International Women's Day to all the women around the world joining us today.